Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Well, for those of you that have never met me, my name is John. I originally I found Zen practice through Appamada Austin in Austin, Texas. And I studied under Peg and to some extent Flint. I learned to sew originally from Peg. And so that's kind of my connection to this practice. I've also, for a while, sewed under Ann Lipscomb, who's now the in-person sewing teacher, and volunteered. I took interest in learning and refining this process, and some of the things in the instructions I found vague. I'm an engineer originally, so vague instructions bother me. Why can't we be as technical and precise and long-winded as possible? Goodness. So that was part of what inspired me to become a teacher, and it actually just wound up being so much deeper and richer than that, and so I've stuck around. I just moved, and the lighting for where I usually was teaching at that desk in my previous home, but the window was above the desk, so I had beautiful light for my face and for the robe, and now the windows are over there and the desk is, so I'm figuring it out. So thank you for bearing with me. You'll probably see some more changes. Before we begin any further, I am going to ask for some of y'all's input. Looks like a lot of y'all are sitting away from a keyboard, so I'll invite you to speak off off mute, if you will, at some point coming here in a bit. First, I'd like to begin with some dedications. This is I don't do this every class. This is something that I just think is important to do once. I'm coming to you from the part of North America that was originally populated by a handful of different Plains Native American tribes, including the Peoria, the Potawatomi, and the Kickapoo. And I think it's important to recognize that I'm on what was traditionally their land that was then colonized. I want to call out, and I'm going to actually refer to my list because it's long. Hyakuzo Ekai, Dogen Zenji, Sawaki Kodo, and Hashimoto Eko. Sawaki Kodo is the lineage in which that we teach, and he and Hashimoto Eko were the first two to kind of revive the practice for Soto Zen in Japan. He impressed upon his students the significance of the robe and really emphasized the robe and shikantaza, which some Dogen historians think matches Dogen's teachings. He went to spread his teaching, and so I want to also recognize Suzuki Roshi, and he invited one of the students of Hashimoto Eko whose name I don't have in front of me, Yoshida Eishun. They came to San Francisco Zen Center. I'm really rushing through this. This is not meant to be an academic thing. I'm trying to honor these people. Kasai Joshin was the teacher who was a student of Sawaki Kodo, who taught Zenke Blanche Hartman, who, if you may recognize the name because that is Flint's root teacher. And then Zenke Blanche Hartman taught Jean Selkirk, I believe worked with Diane Riggs, taught Peg Syverson, taught Valerie Beer. So a lot of where we're coming from is Zenke Blanche Hartman. And I also just want to call out Tomoe Katagiri Roshi from Minnesota for some of the work that she wrote in English as well. So I want to take a moment and hear kind of what folks, what drew you to this practice. So consider this kind of an icebreaker introduction. And to folks who have been in the class before, I see some of you here, if you will also go ahead and go in turn. And I'll make it easy for us because I know it's who's going next. You know, we're not sitting in a circle or something, so it can be challenging. So I'll actually just call based on the order on my screen. So if you can just introduce your name and how you want to be referred to, and then where you're coming from, because we are a geographically diverse group, and then what motivated you to begin this practice. So first, because she's host, is Maria. Maria, will you?
Gosh, what motivated me? Well, I'm Maria. I'm, as some of you know, I think I know all of you actually. Yes, I do. From Barrow-in-Furness, Cumbria. And what motivated me was we did the precepts quite a long time ago in just this, in Nothing Missing, and we had a ceremony with Flint, but we didn't sew the Rakasu, and we didn't do that, so it kind of felt a bit incomplete, you know, the whole process. And I think sewing the Rakasu was really beginning to sew it has really taught me just how important that process is alongside the precepts, and how it really does hold a mirror up to us and helps us to really see how we are in the world. You know, when we sew it, it shows us how we are. And it's been a fascinating process so far, and very insightful. And yeah, it was just wanting to continue with that process and see what that would offer and what would come up for me. I think that's a quick answer off the cuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Shelley, how about you?
I'm Shelley. I live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I've been studying with Flint for many years with Hakomi, and a few years ago, Buddhism called me more strongly, and I bowed for the first time. And I don't really entirely know why I'm here, other than it's calling and I have to follow.
Thank you, Shelley. Lynn, how about you?
My name's Lynn, and Lynn Moore, and I'm based in Leyland, which is in Lancashire in the UK, and not so far from Maria, I suppose, really. About 60 miles or something like that apart, I think. And why am I here? Oh, wow. That's a really big question, I think, for me. Like Maria, I took the precepts ceremony a little while ago when Flint was in the UK, but hadn't had his Dharma transmission. And there's something about the completion of a practice, and also there's something for me as well. I really wanted to be able to offer it as part of something that we do in our particular Sangha. So there is something about the combination of a deepening place in my own practice and being able to go alongside others who would like to also take part in it. It's hard to put in words, isn't it, really? Because it's not really a verbal practice. It's very much an embodied practice. So yes. So for those who would like to also take part. So that's me, I think. Thank you.
Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia Clark. I live in Chorley, Lancashire, really round the corner from Lynn. We're only about 20 minutes away, quarter of an hour away. I came to Zen practice after forcibly having to leave work due to ill health, and then having an opportunity to start rediscovering a new way of living. And I can't believe it. I started with Zen in 2017, we decided, and it was in the front room of Lynn's little room that she sat in now. And yeah, I've just stayed with it. Part of the Just This community that was nothing extra and nothing missing and nothing special, and it's just been wonderful being with all these people, and I have learned so much, and I have had the opportunity to examine myself, and that's a process that continues. Took the precepts last year, which was wonderful, and everybody in the Just This community that's taken part in the sewing project have just been so enthusiastic about it that it's like something that is, you just catch it, you just catch that enthusiasm and think, what am I missing here? Let's go and see. And I'm open to uncovering a lot of things. Unlearning, I think, because I have been a sewer, so I have decided I need to unlearn and start afresh.
Thank you. Claire, looks like you're next.
Hi everyone, lovely to see you and meet you. I'm Claire, I'm based in London in the UK. I came to Zen practice. I feel very lucky. I got an early leg up through my lovely dad, John. And so I came to practice on the early side, and I have got a tremendous amount out of studying the precepts and supporting some members of the community with their precepts. And I have a strong tendency to be overly heady, and so the idea of a practical practice appealed to me as a good probe, to use a Hakomi phrase. And also I was interested in the idea of the long tradition and the lineage, and experiencing what it is to take a place in that. And so I've also found it so far on my journey a tremendously rich practice, which has resonated with me hugely more than I ever thought it would.
Thank you, Claire. Sue, how about you?
I didn't realise I was next because I haven't got my view on. Hi everyone. I was just thinking how lovely it is to, because I'm not very good at being online and things like this, but how lovely it is to see familiar faces and new ones, and be part of part of this going forward as well. So yes, my name's Sue James. I live in Lancaster in the UK, and I came to Zen just about eight years ago, 7, something like that. I've been connected with Buddhism for a long time, over 25 years, and it was for those reasons not. I'd got as far as I could go. No, that's not right. Anyway, it wasn't right for me. And then at the end of the road I live on, I found Nothing Missing with Josh and Trudy, and I thought, how lucky is that? And from then on, I get to meet and grow and learn and face the challenges with this amazing Sangha that I'm now part of. So why do I want to sew the robe? I don't think it's for the ritual part of it, not specifically. But what it is, it's like, I think if I use Maria's word, it's like a mirror. It's a mirror from a practice. I can be rather flighty in my thinking all over the place. And the challenge for me is being stiller and quieter with the presence. But that's the thing that's bringing me here. And also a really open mind and heart, because it'll bring things I didn't expect as well, and challenges. So yes, I think that's all I need to say. Thank you, John, particularly. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sue. Duncan, you're next.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Duncan from Lancashire in the north of England. So I'm close to, Maria, Lynn, Sue, Julia. I've been, part of the Sangha since 2012 when Josh and Trudy started the group. And I was involved in Buddhism before that, but clearly Zen started then. And we were all part of the same precepts group that took the precepts, Lynn and Maria and the rest of us. But we never did the Rakasu. And it's something that I always thought I would do at some point. But with the encouragement of other Sangha members, I've decided that now's the right time, and why wait? So I'm looking forward to doing it. I've never sewn in my life, so this is going to be an interesting experience. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the practice offers, and it's lovely to share it with all of you as well, to doing it together. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Lynn Flocky.
Hello. I came to Buddhism and Zen Buddhism probably about a dozen years ago or so in New York, where I was teaching, and then when I retired here in Texas near Austin, I'm outside of Austin in a little town called Wimberley. I started going to the Austin Zen Center and somehow found my way to Appamada, especially during the pandemic. Online, the Zoom part of it. That's how I met some people here, Rosemary and Maria, and then I see a lot of the others on Flint's intensive on Tuesdays. So I'm happy to be here, and I just want to say this about I'm so happy all the UK people are here. It makes me feel at home. I've spent some time in your country. I taught American university students in London for 3 different semesters. So I got to live in London. It was just like a dream world. I'm so happy to see you all here. But why am I here? I don't know, and I'm scared. I did used to sew my clothes in the old days with machines, but I don't remember doing a whole lot of hand, whatever it's called, stitching. So I'm pretty, Duncan, I'm pretty much in your shoes here as far as experience goes. I did start this last time a little late, and I didn't get this nice intro we're doing today. I started a few times late, and I just got scared. Scared with each class, because everybody seemed like they were just moving along and talking about this and that advanced thing. And I thought, oh, and John tried so hard to help me. He said, why don't you just come in one day and not just be frustrated? And that scared me even more, John. You scared me away. I thought, no, I can't be frustrated, so I can't do this anyway. So I guess the old adage of and why am I drawn to it? Because this practice requires it. I have to say that's it. I would and it's in the way. So you know the old adage: if it's in the way, it's the way. It is the way. So that's I'm hoping to have this wonderful mirror that Maria keeps talking about. I'm hoping that all works, and then I can get this done, and that I see, because I do think it is going to be a struggle for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosemary.
Hi, everyone. And it's really fantastic to see everybody. And also it's like a little trip to the UK. So nice to see all of you and everyone. And Lynn, the struggle part, it's pretty much guaranteed. But for me, well, Zen, it just started with the pandemic. I had no inclination in that direction. And I had met Flint through the psychology part. He gives this workshop up in Cape Cod for those of us with therapists about psychology and Buddhism. I thought that's pretty interesting. So I knew him from that. And I just needed something to keep still during the pandemic. It was very, very hard for me. And so I started meditating. I contacted Flint. Pretty soon, Appamada in Austin everything went online, and I started to gradually sit, meet people, learn. This is not just meditation; it's so much more. And the Rakasu came about for me through all of the precept ceremonies that I was observing, where other people had come forward and spoke and said yes. The precepts, taking the precepts course was deepening my commitment. So I'm just watching and listening, and then Jukai ceremony. So I saw now more of an embodiment in this garment that people sewed. And so I can't say how far through I am with what I'm doing. It goes very slowly. But what I'm learning about myself, a devotional practice it's just different than sitting, because it's more tactile. And because none of my practice has been in person. I went to Austin one time and got to hug people and be in the Zendo on site. But aside from that, it's been solo. So having this material, something physical is really, and tactile has really been significant. One of the chief learning things, and this is early on from Anne, was as I'm stitching, she explains probably to all of us, this is not about, I'm very goal oriented, something, well, I'm making something. She's, no, this is a devotional practice, which is just a total other realm. And that, have we been in this class a year, John? At least a year, right?
Yeah, about a year, yeah.
We started about a year ago. So, week after week, and whatever days I can put in when I'm not in the class, it's more of an integration of that idea. And yeah, so I thank everybody and the practice and John, and thank you. And I'm in New Jersey.
Thank you. And Marla, I see you just joined. So you're now the last. So everyone has explained where they're coming from. and then what has brought them to this sewing practice, and of course how they prefer to be addressed, especially for those I had never met. So yeah, would you mind going real quick?
It's a pleasure to see all of my old sewing friends here and the new ones. I'm delighted to meet you. I'm starting on my second go around. I think in horse racing they call that being lapped. But I I started in May of last year with this cohort, and it took me a little while to get my stitch. And so I read Sewing the Buddha's Robe. That's yeah. And by Selkirk, Jean Selkirk, at the very beginning, and I read it and reread it. It describes the history of the Rakasu. It's a devotional reading. There are pictures. She's just done an incredible job of describing everything about the meaning of all the different pieces. And she actually trained at the San Francisco Zen Center with Suzuki Roshi's wife and some of the other ancestors, Rakusu ancestors in the US. It's just a wonderful pamphlet. You have to order it directly from her. Anyway, stop. So starting shortly after when I started sewing and I finally got my stitch, got my feet under me, there was a lot of turmoil in my life. And since then, I have moved 1,000 miles from Colorado, where I've lived my whole life, to St. Paul, where my community, my Sangha, is located, Awakening Together. And then a month ago, I had knee replacement surgery, and I had been a little bit immobilized since last September. So I didn't do a whole lot of sewing, and that's why I am just now beginning to fold my frame. And I'm very excited about getting back to it with great commitment now that all the craziness apparently, I hope, is behind me. And so that's a long story, but thank you again. And John, especially for your devotion to making this a wonderful, wonderful experience and deeply enriching. I try to describe to my friends and family how important it is. And I also am starting to think about what words I'm going to use when I ask for permission to take Jukai after I finish my Rakasu. And I'm in the middle of my second precepts class, and it's supposed to end in next January. And I have an opportunity to take Jukai in October, and I'm really not sure, as someone who intends to study the precepts for the rest of my life, whether it's inappropriate or presumptuous for me to ask so soon. But I'm going to go ahead and try to finish my Rakasu by September, so there's enough time to send it over to Flint and Hawaii. And I remember one of the first things I heard, John, was you saying that it took you 2 years to sew your first Rakasu. And that has given me such peace, because it really did reinforce that message that it's not about achievement, it's not performative, it is entirely an unfolding of what is present to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Marla.
Yeah.
So I guess
Hello, Gabriela. I am in Mexico City, and well, it's been I think it's like a long time aspiration. Like I've been like a floating Sangha person. Like I go to retreats with some group, and then I'm part of Sangha of another group, and so I've been like a floating Sangha person, and I've been some months now in Appamada. It's been a long time since I have this aspiration of doing my precepts and doing my Rakasu. So it's just like yeah, I think like a step of grounding and committing. So it's a part for me, it's like a physical part of the commitment and of the community also. So I feel honored to be here with all of you, and thank you so much for teaching us
So I guess we've heard a lot of vulnerability. We've heard a lot of in different intentions, a lot of different expectations, concerns. But it sounds like everyone here is coming from a place of wanting to intentions I cannot judge. I'll say that. I don't know a better way to summarize it, but good intentions, strong intentions, intentions to meet practice edges, intentions to go through as opposed to around or what have you. And I want to highlight that this is a hard process in person, and it's when you can hold and feel and inspect the teacher's demonstration that they hand to you, it is harder over online. And I think we have enough people who are making great progress to know that it's very possible, it's very doable. But I want to encourage you that questions are expected. They're not wrong, they're not out of place. And I hope that each of you can trust that the rest of the people in this class are right there with you, that there may be different degrees of technical skill or visual acuity or what have you, different sewing skill, but everyone has had questions. There are some of the people from the previous cohort are very skilled sewers, and they still have a question almost every class. So it's expected. It is not, there's nothing aberrant, and this group is a trustworthy group, to my eyes, at least. So I want to rehash the history. I know that there's been recent Dharma talks from Anne. I know that the precepts course often includes kind of I don't have a precise count of who's been to which of these talks. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick history of where this robe comes from. And I'm going to tell it to start from the perspective of an Indian king on the Ganges River. So the Ganges in India was, in Iron Age India, was a hotbed of society, culture, war. It was where there was already a dense population, and there was one king really making a name for himself, King Bimbalasara. And King Bimbalasara, as he was conquering and what have you, somehow, I'm not clear on the history precisely, but somehow finds Shakyamuni Buddha, already attained Buddhahood, already teaching, and becomes Buddha's student. He also becomes a stream enterer at some time, so he makes some progress as king. So he was a dedicated practitioner. He always honored, or he always showed honor to Buddha, even though he himself was a great uniter. He actually laid the foundation for some major dynasties in India. Like, he was a powerful guy. So imagine that you're this king. You have expanded your territory. You have laid the foundations for what will become one of the biggest Iron Age dynasties. And you go and you bow in front of this guy all the time, and you bow to his monks even. And one day you're going along, and some people say it's an elephant, some people say it's a horse, but you're riding along in a position of honor, and you see a monk on the road, and you say, "Oh, it is one of Shakyamuni Buddha's monks. I must show my honor." You get off your horse or your elephant, and you go and you bow to this person, and you discover, much to your embarrassment, that this is not one of Shakyamuni Buddha's monks. So King Bimbalasara goes to Buddha. He honors Buddha. He does all of the traditional ways, and he sits at his right side and says, "I need you to make a way for your monks to be identifiable. I need you to have some way that makes your people differentiable from the other itinerant monks that are wandering around India at the time, the ascetics that Buddha practiced with but then left. I need to know who your folks are." And that is the story of the impetus for the development of this robe. I don't have a clear idea on how we got from there to the next part of the story, but the Buddha was traveling, and he was seeing terraced rice fields, and he found them beautiful. And so he asked Ananda, can we make a robe that looks like these terraced rice fields? And Ananda agreed that he would figure it out. And I want to show, often in these histories, when people are describing this, there's not a visual demonstration of what's meant by the rice fields. And so I'm going to take a moment and do that. I want to show what's meant by rice terrace. So let me change my camera. So this is the Rakasu that I'm currently sewing as a donation. It will be given to Appamada for them to give somebody who's not able to sew on their own. And terraced rice fields are built in a way that water flows naturally from the high point to the low point, terrace to terrace. So you can see here that this is the topmost part, and water would flow from here to either here or here. And then from here, it would flow to either here or yes, I guess either way, it would flow down to here or to here. And likewise, or sorry, to here and to here. And you can see that there's so this centerpiece is on top of these two pieces. These two pieces are on top of these two pieces. The inspiration of the Buddha, seeing rice fields, the lifeblood of, you know, so many different people's daily meals, the core staple food in this part of the world. He was so moved by the beauty of these and by the structure of them that it inspired this design. Don't focus on the technical details for now, but I wanted to just to demonstrate that is to some extent what was meant by his request to make it look like rice fields. So the Buddha has given this instruction to Ananda, and this whole tradition of sewing robes comes to be. So with the early development of Buddha's robe, there were a lot of traditions that were established. You probably heard that only discarded cloth was used, commonly from charnel grounds where corpses are burnt from the deceased, scraps of fabric that caught in the flame, the heat of the flames and rose and fluttered away, discarded cloth from menstruation, various different things that make the fabric meaningless or worthless to most of society. Most of society would not even use these rags to clean. They are at the very bottom of the Indian system of valuing fabric for whatever reason. And these were the materials that the Buddha chose to make robe from. And he also there were rules around color, that the color should not inspire envy, that it should be a dull color. And often the fabric was intentionally dyed to be a color that did exactly that. It did not inspire envy. And so a lot of this did transfer for a long time, but of course, as history spanned away from Buddha, you begin to see variation. You begin to see, I think, a relatively pleasant blue color for robes. You begin to see intensely detailed brocade in, like, currently Shingon Buddhism still has a very elaborate robe materials, very fine silks. So there's a lot of variation that has happened since then, but that's where we're coming from. The name Kasaya, or from where Kesa, the full-size robe, is called a Kesa, and Kashaya, which is where that name comes from, even that means broken or muted color. So there's a long history of this not being a mark of attainment, not being a mark of pride or honor. This is, and I want it to be loud and clear now, so that it's not, there's no mistake. This is Buddha's teaching, and that is something that Dogen was really, really clear on. That Sawaki Kodo and Takahashi, that Eiko, I don't remember the other name, were very clear on. This is Buddha's teaching. So what else is a Kesa? So in the merits of the Kesa, there's or one of the chants from the merits of the Kesa by Dogen, there's a long list of it having almost magical properties, the ability to protect from nagas, the ability to give immunity from and protection from poisonous reptiles. And to me, this, to my Western modernist materialist eyes, this is some fabric. If a venomous snake's fangs could get through this, what protection could it offer? So what is a kesa? Does it protect us from nagas? And then there's one other major thing that I think is interesting about the kesa, and it's in a verse that of unknown attribution, but there's been some recent teachers that have adopted it. Wherever it goes, the snail is at home when it dies. There is no world outside the kesa. And I think that that is one of the most, that has stuck with me the most. Of all of the different things when I study the history of the full-size robe, the Rakasu, the bowing mats, all of these different manifestations of this practice, that one really sticks. And I'll say it again just for, just so that it's, just because I like it, frankly. Wherever it goes, the snail is at home when it dies. There is no world outside the kesa. So the kesa is a much larger garment. There are 7-panel version, 9-panel versions, very complex versions that are actually made from non-virgin material, now called rag robes. They actually go and collect scrap fabric, and it's considered to be the most difficult version because it's so hard to work with these random scraps that you find. You don't seek them out for their material properties, they come to you, so to speak. This instead is more approachable, much more comfortable, and the history on it is unclear, precisely where it comes from. In the 800s, in China, there was a major Buddhist persecution. And around this time, there's also the development of monks beginning to farm for themselves. One of the sort of uncles of Buddhism, of our chain of Buddhism, said a day without work is a day without food. This is a new sentiment in Buddhism at the time, where food was always collected for monks from begging. This was the first time, and it was seen by some as controversial. But at the same time, this was a time when monks were wandering from teacher to teacher. There was thought to be no discipline. It was thought to be a degenerate age. So what he may have actually been bringing was discipline, may have been bringing a commitment to place, a commitment to community that had not been seen in China at the time. So this teacher was bringing farming in, and then there was a major persecution, and farming helped Buddhism survive that persecution. But there was an emperor who had some ideas. He was very nationalist, basically, and he thought that Buddhism was a foreign influence. So 2 major theories on the Rakasu is that it was meant to be a miniature robe that could be worn under lay clothing so that monks could hide and just wouldn't be visible. And the other theory is that it could be worn with a sash around the waist. It could be held in place for working in the field. So those are the 2 main theories on the history. There is a third, and it is relatively common in Japanese Soto, but not necessarily outside of that, that it was developed in response to government mandates in Japan in the 1800s. So you don't need to know these. You don't need to take notes, but I hope to give you some flavor of, this really is a warm hand to warm hand practice, that there have been some sort of fundamental kind of going back to basics review of old sutra to try to adjust and see and make sure that we're sewing this the right way. But this robe has been sewn continuously in one school of Buddhism or another continuously since the Buddha's time. So perhaps the kesa then really is the Buddha's teachings because the Buddha taught it. So I don't want to get too lost in the clouds or too deep into kind of the devotional aspects of this. but I really am really materialist or modernist in a way. I really do balk when you come to these protection from nagas. What are you talking about? These mythical creatures. I have an aversion to that, and this practice has helped me meet that. And I'm just going to leave that where it is. I have been able to engage in the forms of traditional Zen Buddhism more deeply with this practice. So I want to talk about some guidelines for the class and some materials and what you can expect from the next 2 or 3 classes. So some guidelines. So you don't have to come every week. Come when you are able. The general format of the class will be 30 minutes to an hour of silent practice, depending on how many questions there are at the beginning of class. We'll open with a check-in. We'll see where are you in your practice? Are you feeling comfortable and confident? And answer questions to help make sure that you are feeling comfortable and confident. Maria has been incredibly diligent and incredibly helpful in giving us a large resource of time-stamped YouTube videos where you can, and a document that collects all of the timestamps so that you can search that document for a word and then go find the video that describes that part of the practice. And then, of course, I'm always available for email. If you miss a class where you feel like something that was critical to your stage, you can review the video. You can email me. You can wait till the next class that you do attend. All are perfectly viable options. I'm an incredibly permissive teacher, and I'm here regardless. So as long as we're all respectful to the group and to the groups, and we honor the group, that's all I ask for. If you are in or near Austin, and I think Lynn Flocky's the only one that is currently, that is true, or Marla, no, Marla, you're someone else. That's right. You just mentioned that you're St. Paul. If you are in or near the Austin area, you may attend, or if you're visiting Austin and you're there on a Sunday, you are welcome to attend in person. And if there's an in-person if there's an in-person person who's watching this recording, know that you can come to our online at any time. In general, with Zen practice, do try to be the 5-minute, if you're on time, you're late, that kind of principle. Just make an effort. I'm not like Marla's joining because she was in another aspect of Zen practice that she could do remotely, which is such a blessing, and then switch to this remote practice. That's okay. Like I said, I'm an incredibly permissive teacher. I just ask that it is an effort in this practice that we do show up kind of when the hon is being struck, so to speak. So if you can do that. And that's just so we can begin in a timely manner, really. Rakasus, no Rakasu goes unfinished. And I want to explain what that means. So when you begin a Rakasu, how do I explain this? So no Rakasu goes unfinished, but this does not mean that you have to finish your Rakasu. It does not mean that there's a time frame for finishing a Rakasu. It doesn't mean that you have 1 year to finish a Rakasu, 6 weeks to finish a Rakasu, 10 years to finish a Rakasu. As long as your intention to complete a Rakasu remains, you cannot touch it for as long as you need to not touch it. That is okay. However, when you decide that if you ever decide that you're going to leave this practice and that you're not going to finish your Rakasu, my only ask is that you connect with me so that you can ship me the however far you've gotten, and I'll finish the Rakasu for you. That's a long-standing tradition, and something that I think is really important just as a point of tradition. So again, there's no timeline. You don't have to be the one to finish it, but just know that once we begin this process, that I hope that the material, the object that you're creating itself never becomes abandoned, because that would be like the tinzo, the cook at a monastery, walking away before they finish their meal, finish cooking for the monastery. It'd be like a Dharma teacher walking away before they finish their talk that day. It'd be like walking away halfway through cleaning the sink at the temple during work practice. It's just each of these practices is something that we do. You know, when you sit in zazen with a group, you are committing to staying still, relatively quiet with this group for the duration the group is sitting. And it's similar to this. This is, you're sowing this in community, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if you're sitting in your own home. So there is some agreement that this is something that you're going to do. And if you're unable to, then I will finish it. Anne or I will finish it. And we're happy to do that. So that's one final guideline. Any questions about that? Some of these more practical details of showing up or anything like that? Yes, Claire.
I just wondered, is another guideline that you'd like to speak to about the rakasu, that the fabric is considered a rakasu from the first stitch?
Yes, thank you for that, Claire. Yes, so once you, the material that y'all will be sent is considered a rakasu. As soon as you begin to make this progress, treat it as though it is a rakasu. And what does that mean? What does that mean, John? So there's a handful of guidelines. So an object of Dharma is you never lay something on an object of the Dharma. You never, just toss a book on top of your rakasu. You never, it's always the top thing in a suitcase. So if you're traveling and you're bringing this with you, load your in progress rakasu last. So it sits on top. And then once you have a complete rakasu, that also goes in your suitcase last. It is the last thing that you pack. Do not eat in the rakasu, and in this case, while you're sewing the rakasu. Do not take the rakasu to the bathroom, which doesn't make much sense in this context. Please don't sew in the bathroom. I think those are the big ones. It is an object to which we show deference and respect. So if I've missed any guidelines.
How you hold
I don't
it?
think I'm sorry?
How you hold it?
Yes, thank you, Ben. So a rakasu, or in the case of a box of rakasu materials, whenever practical, if you're opening a door, of course, that's an exception, you hold with both hands. And then once you have a completed rakasu in its envelope, and this is something that you should check with your preceptor, actually. So let me clarify and pause. Your preceptor, whether it be Peg, Flint, Josh, Lori, whoever it is that you are studying with, can overrule what I'm saying. So I want that to be clear. I am not your Dharma teacher. I am your sewing teacher. However, I know that a lot of these things are what Peg says, so that's where I'm going to go with this, because she's one of the two senior teachers, and I think that Peg and Flint are aligned on that. Yeah, and I'm not going to get into the details on the completed rakasu just yet. I think that's something to discuss with your preceptor, because if you remembered it from this meeting, frankly, I'd be very, very impressed from your first stitch to actual jukai. Okay, I'm going to do some materials. So this actually will vary. So I'm going to speak primarily to folks. Actually, I'm going to address someone in the room. Lynn Moore, did y'all make a decision on how y'all were going to package? Are y'all pinning before you cutting and pinning before sending, or are you sending the face uncut?
We're sending the face uncut. So people have got their packages now. So they have the face is drawn but not cut.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. So the basic materials, and I'm going to show some examples. So the basic materials, and we can send out links and examples, but it's not particularly critical which ones you get, but there are some things you must have. So I'm going to assemble them here that you may see them. You will, of course, need needles. Your common everyday sharps. Is this not upside down? Oh, that's right. I forgot that I had that. So I'm using size 8 sharps. I'm not clear if the same sizing system is used in the UK. You will need, because for those of you who are receiving uncut faces, you will need a pair of decent sewing shears. You may get away with buying things not marked as sewing shears, just like your conventional kind of grocery store scissors, but do test them on fabric first, and do not use scissors that have been used for things other than fabric that you don't know how they cut fabric on the face itself. You want to make sure that you get a clean, precise cut when you do this without the material getting caught or pulling between the or snagging or tearing. You want just a clean, straight cut. Optional, but very helpful. Some type of smaller scissors or thread snips, I think they're sometimes called, just for cutting thread. And sometimes some of those smaller things that get cut, this can be useful. You will need some type of square. I have here, so I just moved, I mentioned that at the beginning, so I don't have access to the stuff I left back at Appamada. So what I have right now is this carpentry square. This is a regular flat kind of 2D carpentry square that is adequate for the purposes of this. There's also special, they are clear acrylic plastic squares, often sold in the US as quilting squares. I'm not sure if that language is what's used in the UK, but they are, there's also T-squares, which are also clear plastic. These are different names, and again, we can send out a list of different options. You will need measuring implements that are in centimeters. If I was going to recommend that you buy a single measuring instrument, I would recommend a meter stick. A single meter stick, which may be unwieldy for small detailed stuff, but it would be helpful when you're doing the longer stuff, not to have to try to, okay, that's where the 30 is, so now I'm going to restart my measurement. If you can, and I believe this does exist, I believe I've seen them for sale, if you can find a meter stick that is double-sided, meaning you can have 0 is on both sides, so that you can have the ruler on either side of a line, and you can begin measuring on either. I don't know how to describe this. Is this clear? Is this clear to y'all what I'm trying to say? Sometimes when you are sewing, you will have the edge of the material here, and that's where you want to mark or something, but your meter stick is going to you're going to have it, poking you in the chest if you have it with the numbers only on one side. But if you have the numbers starting at 0 on both sides, that's very helpful. So if you can find that, that's ideal. I don't have that handy though. You will need cotton, white cotton thread. This is used for basting almost exclusively. This is used for practice stitches. For practice stitches, you may also use any general use thread that you have handy. It's not critically important. What is important to me is that we don't use silk because it comes from the death of a living creature. At least the Gutermann brand that we typically use is not ahimsa or harmless. We do use it with care. You will need a silk thread as well. I have a video recently uploaded. Did we upload that, Maria? The thread color video?
Yes, it's
Okay.
on the materials and cutting video.
Okay, great. So we do have a thread color video that I recently redid for us because the previous one, the lighting was poor. And frankly, the lighting isn't too much better. It's very hard to accurately capture the colors on video. In my experience, the colors that they use in their photos online are pretty accurate though. And we'll send out a link for so the brand is Gutermann, just so that I say that verbally. But we'll send out a link for the actual colors of thread that we recommend. Look at the colors that we recommend. They typically are neutral, kind of nature-based neutral colors, but also a couple of kind of lavender colors, some blues, some greens, some browns. If you find something in the ballpark that isn't precisely reflected in the ones that we listed, just check with me, and we can make a decision then. You will need a thread puller. I find a thread puller very, very helpful. It is much easier than trying to use the back end of a needle and scissors. There's about, I think, I'm forgetting the number now. There's about 2.7 meters, I think, or 3.7 meters of stitches in a Rakasu. And I probably sewed 50% more than that, because sometimes there are mistakes that are made. Sometimes your teacher didn't understand your question, so you sewed something wrong, and then we both get to laugh as I have to undo this large amount of stitch and redo it. Sometimes you did not ask your teacher, and something was sewed not structurally correctly. And then sometimes there's something goes really awry with like a knot, something becomes knotted and you have to start all over. So this can be useful. You will need pins. I've got these here that are all metal heads. I prefer them, but I think that their glass head pins are just as fine. We can send out links for those as well. These are really critical, though they are not an optional item. And then if you would like, so these are also 3 really critical tools. This one, however, can be done with some exceptions. I'll explain that in a second. This is a marking pencil. You will need it for a couple of different phases, even though you're being sent a pretty complete package where most of the marking and cutting has been done for you. You will need a pencil for marking some things. Some things are remarked. Sometimes just the moisture and sweat of your fingers will remove markings, and you'll want to firm them up before sewing. This is my favorite little ruler. Anne got these for all of the sewers in the last cohort, and I don't know if we're doing that again, but I've really appreciated having a small transparent ruler. I normally prefer metal, but transparency is really valuable, and it's a durable enough item. I think it will probably last me my lifetime, so I'm okay with the plastic use. This is called a Hera, H-E-R-A. It is a traditional Japanese tool. I think there are equivalents in the European sewing traditions, but it is this particular one comes from Japan. Its purpose is to be pressed and dragged along fabric. And you can see it has made, oh, where is it? So it's there on my thumb. You can see it's made sort of a crease and indentation on the front, but more importantly, it does make a visible crease on the back, especially when only done on a single layer of fabric. And so sometimes in this construction, you will need to know from the back, you will need to know where your chalk marks on the front are. So this tool is used to mark that. If you do not want to buy a hera because you do not imagine yourself engaging with the Japanese sewing tradition after finishing this, the back of a table knife has been a successful option. Credit cards have been used. Anything that has a fairly thin, fairly hard edge that is smooth and rounded, that won't damage fabric, as long as you have something like that, that can be used. And in fact, I have tested and successfully used the corner of this little plastic ruler, has worked in the pinch. So this one is completely optional. We'll send out the link on this again. I wanted to have sort of the verbal description as well, though. Give me a moment to consider if I've missed anything. Don't believe I have, no. The rest of the materials you'll need, you will need at some time, you will need probably, well, depends on how precise you're being. So there's a piece of white silk taffeta and a piece of interfacing that is white. So having some sort of pencil, a regular number 2 pencil, HB pencil, is nice for marking on that light material as well. So you may need this. And I think that's it. Some things that are useful to folks are things like needle threaders. There's also the option for self-threading needles. I think the head's a little bit larger, but basically it has, instead of a closed loop for the head of the needle, as you see in this oversized tapestry needle, there's a little opening on one end. And so you can sneak the fabric in. So people who have differences in their visual ability to focus on the fine details up close, some people do appreciate that. Some people also like using, in moderation, beeswax. You can run a piece of troublesome silk thread. You can see it's kind of got little grooves in it. You can run a piece of troublesome silk thread that is catching, snagging, or twisting too much on you. You can run it across that with your thumb against the, you can just run it through, I don't know what I'm saying. You may run the thread between the two materials, and it will help the thread behave more smoothly. It will go through the fabric smoothly if it is if it is rough for some reason. I think most people get by without ever using the beeswax, and it doesn't prevent the twisting. The stitch that we use is a back stitch. So on long pieces of material, sometimes just a twist gets introduced, but we'll get into that. You can always dangle the thread from what you're working on to allow it to untwist itself with gravity. I also want to highlight that thimbles are really useful to me. The back of needles, I find them to hurt my fingers when I am pushing from the back of the needle. That's a really fine, very hard piece of material, and I find it hurts my fingers. And sometimes we are working with so many layers of fabric that it's really helpful to me to have a thimble. I also find it helps me with consistency and accuracy because I'm able to use only one finger to maneuver the angle, to control the angle of my needle. And it took me some time to get used to it. I was probably, after 20 lines of practice stitches, just barely getting comfortable with it. But it's useful because then I can use my index and thumb to do other things. And that also took practice, but somebody recommended if you have a chance to get good at the thimble and you plan on sewing more, do it. So I want to mention that now. Again, I think most people get by without ever using a thimble, so that is completely optional. Okay, so again, a list will be sent out on these of materials, different examples a list of thread colors will be sent, and the link to the thread color video will be sent. Are there any other questions on the materials before knowing that those lists will be sent? Anything that wants to be clarified sort of verbally?
I think Shelley wants to ask.
Yeah, Shelley.
So I will receive a beginning part of fabric,
You
or I
will,
have to get
yes.
the fabric. Okay.
Everyone, so I think Gabriella also joined. Yeah, Gabriella, Lynn Flocky, I want to touch base with you what you said on your about not having the we'll connect off out of this video. I'll just send you a quick email to clarify your registration. So Shelley, Gabriella, you two and a couple of other North Americans will be receiving from me your materials. You will receive your blue fabric, and I'm undecided if I'm going to. I may, just to keep a consistent experience for y'all and the UK sewers, I might send it uncut as well, the face. I will make it clear to you once I know exactly what I'm sending there, but you will have all of the blue material that you need. You will have all of the interfacing material that you need and the silk. So what you will need to buy is just the threads, needles, marking instruments, what have you. What y'all will need for next class, I actually have, I'd made the decision that for this class, I did not want us to get into the practice stitching just yet. What you will need for next class is some sort of fabric, maybe an old t-shirt that you don't care about that you can sacrifice. Better would be something that is a similar fabric to this. So the fabric we're using is called a broadcloth. Broadcloth means it is I think generally cotton, but not necessarily, I guess. It is a simple weave of just kind of crosshatch weave. It's the most simple weave. I don't know the precise name for it, and it has less stretch than a material like a t-shirt. So this is the material that we use for the Rakasu. So I recommend for your practice stitches using a similar material. Lynn, did the UK folks get? Do they already have a piece of practice material?
I guess they'll have it in their pack.
Okay, great, thank you. So I don't think Gabriella and Shelley, I don't think that I will get those to you in time for next class. So just some sort of thread, cotton thread, or polyester thread, some sort of non-silk thread that you have around if you do so, and a needle and some sort of cloth to do practice stitches on will be required for next class. And I think that's about it. The introduction and getting started is going to be pretty slow and pretty careful. It'll give people who missed us first time. I recognized after last time, both Lynn Flocky talked about her experience of joining a little late. I think Marlo was also not at the very first class. A couple of folks were not at the very first class, and I want to give folks the chance to become well established without feeling like they have to have this catch up. So the initial start is going to be relatively slow. So next time it's just going to be practice stitches primarily. I want to take a moment. Do any of our existing cohort have sewing questions that are stopping you from where you're progressing, and kind of give an example of what that interaction looks like? Lynn, yeah.
I'm just really frightened right
Oh,
now
wow.
because I'm about ready to start folding my frame. Oh boy, I need to review a lot of videos because there are instructions about the frame scattered throughout because of different. But I will register some terror.
Okay. Well, your terror, I hear that. So, yes, thank you.
And also to say, one of the things that when you're talking about the beeswax, one of the things I found it useful for is I'm doing the pine needle stitch, and I have found it useful for that because it's useful for me when you're using a particularly long piece of thread.
It's useful to help it pass through those same holes over and over again, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the pine needle stitch is the very last stitch in completing the Rakasu itself. It is the symbol of our tradition. Different schools of Zen Buddhism have different symbols. Ours is a broken pine needle stitch. I forget the precise symbolism. I know it's something to do with longevity, something to do with steadfastness. I think there is a reasoning for why pine needle was chosen for Soto. It's one of the last things that's sewn. Marla, do you want to dive in? Do you want me to demonstrate any of that pinning for you in this class? We're getting close to the end. I don't know if we'll have time.
What I intend to do this week is just to go really focus on some videos that I know exist that are really helpful and reread the instructions several times.
Sure.
It'll be fine. I know it'll be fine.
Great. Maria, I heard you, I think.
No.
Oh, I thought I heard someone. Claire, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I just thought I would share, Marla, that my experience with folding the frame, and I know it was similar for a few others, was it is helpful to watch the videos and it is helpful to read the instructions carefully, and it still doesn't make sense until you actually do it.
I'll second that. It kind of unfolds as you do it, and it for me I felt the same sort of terror and thought this is impossible. In fact, every single step of the Rakasu felt impossible to me until I was actually doing that very step, and it just kind of unravels and reveals itself as you go along with help and support. But yeah, I felt the same. I just want to share that too. Yeah. I feel you, Marla.
Also, Marla, I wanted to ask you, have you got the little model that John made?
Yes, absolutely. And that is where it's helpful, is on the frame, correct?
Yeah, there's one of the frame.
Oh, yes, wonderful. Oh, yes.
The little paper.
Yeah. I never got around to using those on the face because I didn't have any trouble spatially with the face for some reason. Yeah, it's completely irrational, this terror that I have. But I have people like Maria and Claire to thank for giving it to me, because as you went through that, you were expressing horror sometimes. So
Yeah, and I couldn't believe it when I actually turned the frame inside out, or right where I was like, oh my goodness, it's a frame. I was shocked and horrified that I'd actually made one. It just kind of, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah. The neck piece, or the neck piece and straps, was that way for me. There's some things about this construction that are absolutely confounding until you've done it twice, 3 times. I don't know. It's like even just the Marla says she did not need the little demonstrations for the face. I sure did. It's just a confoundingly it's not like anything I've ever sewn, and I had sewn some, not much, but some, and it's remarkable. It's part of the fun of it once you're past it, once it's on the back end of you. But it's yeah, I look forward to seeing everyone, or being available as people walk through this. Well, Marla, I think we can get into it next time while we'll have practice stitches. So y'all can expect there will be some period of practice stitching that will occur next time. And I will want to approve each of your practice stitches before you ever touch the garment. So we're probably going to do that not next week, but via email after next week. Just take some time. And I'm going to explain a couple of different approaches to it. I'll demonstrate it very carefully. Oh, do we have anyone here today that's left-handed? I need to know. Lynn, yeah, great. So anyone else? Okay, great. So I will demonstrate left-handed for you, Lynn. Absolutely. I want to make sure that everyone gets to see it the way they're going to be doing it. And Lynn, if you're on, help me to remember if I forget. I like to switch back and forth, right hand, left hand, to demonstrate stuff just all the way through the Rakasu. Because there's a lot of left-handed folks, and there's not a lot of left-handed resource out there. So I would like to do more of that. Okay, well, we're getting close to the top of the hour. So next week, just need your practice stitch materials for the new folks. For the existing cohort, I told you last week that we'd have time for questions, and I could get you started, but that's not how it turned out. But next week we will, while there's while the practice sewing or stitches are going, there can be time for questions next week. Well, thank you all so much for joining today. I'm super thrilled to have a new group of faces and stuff, and it's exciting. A lot of Soto Zen is forms, they say. And so there's kind of this idea that forms are a critical part of our tradition. And traditionally, the form for this is first we bow to the altar, and then we bow to each other. And I'm going to go ahead and suggest that that's something we do. And for those of you who did not raise your hand that you have something in your room, maybe just bring something into your sewing room next time, wherever it is that you're sewing. And for today, if you want, you can just bow to the altar in your mind or what have you. So just 2 bows. If you have an altar in your room, bow towards that, and then we'll turn and bow towards each other. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Everybody.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
See
Bye.
you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.